Have you ever rented a room to someone and realized too late they were never supposed to be alive? Emily thought she was being practical when she rented out her basement to a quiet man who always paid in cash, no questions asked. But after he vanished overnight, the police found something she could never explain: rows of human bones, stacked like trophies over 100 years old. That same night, footsteps echoed up the basement stairs. And when Emily checked the records, she discovered the man she rented to had been dead for more than a century. What happens when the tenant you welcome into your home refuses to ever leave? The house on Maple Hollow Road was never meant to feel lonely, but it did. Emily Carson had bought it 6 months earlier after her divorce, looking for a quiet place in rural Pennsylvania where she could rebuild her life. The house was old white siding, sagging porch steps, and a broad, yawning basement that smelled faintly of mildew, but it was affordable. That mattered more than anything. Still, the mortgage was tight and Emily needed extra cash. That was why she nailed a little basement apartment for rent sign to the elk tree by the road. She wasn't expecting much. Maybe a college kid, maybe a retiree. Instead, she got him. He introduced himself simply as Mr. Harris, no first name, just Harris. He was in his late 40s, pale, with a neatly trimmed beard, gone salt and pepper. He wore a brown overcoat even in warm weather, spoke politely but with a voice that carried no warmth, and always avoided her eyes. He'd spotted her sign, asked about the rent, and before she could even finish her nervous explanation, pulled out a stack of cash. "No lease," he said. "Cash every month." "I won't bother you." Emily hesitated. Something about him made her uneasy, but the money was real, thick, and immediate. The basement had its own entrance, a small kitchenette, and a bathroom. Against her better instincts, she handed him the keys. For the first 2 weeks, Harris was quiet. Too quiet. Emily hardly saw him come or go. Sometimes she'd catch the faint sound of movement beneath the floor shuffling, dragging, but whenever she passed him outside, he only nodded curtly, never offering more than a few clipped words. Then the smells began. At first, it was subtle like damp soil or old leaves. But soon, a sharp metallic odor crept through the vents, so strong it made Emily gag while cooking. She knocked on the basement door once, asking if he had maybe left food to rot. There was silence. Then from deep below, a sound, 3 slow knocks against the pipes. She froze, hand hovering on the doorknob. "Mr. Harris?" No answer. That night, she dreamed of something wet dragging itself up the basement stairs. By the 3rd week, the noises grew worse. Emily would wake at 2 or 3 a.m. to the sound of scraping below her bed, as though something heavy was being pushed across the cement floor. Other times, it was the rhythmic tap of knuckles against the underside of the floorboards. She told herself it was normal, he was just moving furniture, or maybe he had some sort of hobby. But one morning, while carrying laundry down to the shared washer near the basement door, she caught a glimpse through the half-open crack. Inside, a single light bulb flickered. She saw shadows, long, skeletal shapes that didn't quite match the outline of a man. And beneath them, rows of something pale and uneven stacked along the wall. For a heartbeat, she thought they were bones. Then the light went out. When she opened the door fully, the basement was dark, empty, silent. She closed it quickly and told herself she'd imagined it. The following Friday, she decided she couldn't keep ignoring it. She waited until evening when she knew he'd returned. From her kitchen window, she'd watched him slip down the side entrance, coat collar pulled high, carrying something large wrapped in burlap. Now she stood at the top of the stairs, heart hammering. "Mr. Harris," she called. A pause. Then his voice floated up calm, flat, chilling in its simplicity. "Don't come down here, Mrs. Carson." Something in his tone, polite but heavy with warning, made her throat go dry. She stepped back, retreating into her kitchen. That night, the knocking stopped. For the first time in weeks, the basement was silent. Emily tried to convince herself it was good, but somehow the silence was worse. By Sunday, Harris was gone. No note, no rent money left behind. The basement door stood unlocked, keys still dangling in the lock. She should have felt relieved. Instead, dread curdled in her stomach. She called the police, told them her tenant had vanished. 2 officers arrived, one young and serious, the other older and unimpressed. They went downstairs while Emily hovered at the top of the steps. Seconds later, the younger cop shouted. Emily forced herself to look. The basement was colder than she remembered, the concrete floor damp. And there, against the far wall, laid in neat, deliberate rows, were bones. Dozens of them. Human bones, yellowed and brittle, stacked like trophies. The air smelled thick, metallic. Emily staggered back, gagging. What the hell is this? The officer turned to her, face pale. Ma'am, these bones are old. Really old. Over 100 years at least. Emily's vision swam. The rows seemed to stretch longer than they had a moment ago, as if the shadows were filling the room with more shapes, more remnants of the dead. Then from the silence, she heard it again. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Rising from the dark. Emily's hands shook as she clutched the stair railing, the sound of those footsteps echoing up from the basement. The younger officer, his name tag read Collins, snapped his flashlight toward the far wall. The beam cut across rows of bones stacked like firewood, each one yellowed with age. The other officer, a broad man named Sykes, muttered a curse under his breath. There's no one down here, Sykes said, though his voice carried no confidence. But Emily swore she heard it deliberate, dragging steps, growing closer. Collins swung his light across the cement floor, empty, only dust, bones, and silence. Yet the echo of movement lingered, fading as if swallowed by the walls themselves. Emily backed into the kitchen, heart racing. I told you something was wrong with him. Sykes gave her a sharp look. Ma'am, what exactly do you know about this tenant? Not much, Emily admitted. He paid in cash. Always wore the same coat. He never even told me his first name. Christ, Sykes muttered. Collins crouched near the bones, scanning them with his flashlight. These aren't recent. Look at the patina. This is decades of age. Maybe more. Emily hugged herself, shivering. Then why are they here? No one answered. The police called forensics. Within an hour, the property swarmed with uniforms and vans. Neighbors lingered at the edges of their lawns, whispering. Emily stood on her porch, numb, watching strangers carry bags of human remains out of her basement. One forensic tech told her quietly, "These are old, very old. We're talking 19th century, maybe earlier. Looks like they were exhumed, moved here deliberately." Moved here, deliberately? By whom? Emily wanted to tell them about the man who'd rented the basement, but she couldn't even explain him properly. She had no address, no ID, no phone number. Nothing but a name Harris. And then came the question that chilled her to the marrow. If the bones are over 100 years old, then what the hell was he doing with them? That night, after the last police car pulled away, the house fell back into silence. Emily sat in her living room, lights blazing, staring at the locked basement door. Every creak of the old house made her jump. Sleep felt impossible. Around 2 a.m., she dozed on the couch, only to wake with her heart hammering. Tap, tap, tap. It was faint, but unmistakable. She sat up, holding her breath. The sound came from directly beneath her, the basement. Her mind raced. The police cleared it out. There's no one left down there. Still, the tapping continued. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more. Rhythmic, insistent. Emily pressed her palms over her ears and whispered, "It's in my head, just in my head." But then another sound followed. Footsteps, heavy, on the basement stairs. Slowly, impossibly, the knob of the basement door rattled. Emily bolted to her bedroom, slammed the door, and shoved a dresser in front of it. She lay awake the rest of the night, clutching her phone, too terrified to call anyone because she wasn't too sure she could explain what was happening without sounding insane. By morning, sunlight made the nightmare feel less real. Almost. Emily forced herself to go about her routine. She brewed coffee. She opened curtains. She told herself she'd imagined everything, but the basement door was wide open, not kicked in. Not forced, just standing open, yawning into darkness. Her stomach turned to ice. 2 days later, Detective Marla Jennings from the county sheriff's office came to follow up. She was tall, blunt, with tired eyes that said she'd seen worse but still didn't like it. "We're running the bones through analysis," Jennings explained, flipping through her notepad. "So far, early signs suggest they were stolen from cemeteries. Graves disturbed, relocated here." Emily blinked. Stolen? By who? Jennings closed the notebook. "That's what we'd like to ask your tenant, Harris, was it?" "I don't even know if that's his real name," Emily admitted. "He just vanished." Jennings studied her for a moment. "And you said you heard noises after you left?" "Yes." Emily swallowed hard. "Knocking, footsteps. Last night, I swear someone tried the door." Jennings frowned. "We searched the whole basement." "It was empty." Emily hesitated. "Detective, what if it wasn't him? What if it was?" She stopped herself. The word ghost felt childish in her mouth. Jennings raised an eyebrow but didn't press. She simply said, "Keep your doors locked. If he comes back, call us immediately." Easier said than done. That night, Emily dreamed she was standing in the basement. The air was damp, suffocating. The bones weren't neatly stacked anymore. They were piled high, spilling across the floor. And from within the pile, a pale hand reached out, fingers twitching, pulling itself free. She woke screaming. The clock read 3:03, and from the basement came a sound louder than ever, deliberate and real. A single footstep. Then another, rising, closer, coming up the stairs. Emily didn't sleep the rest of that night. She sat on the edge of her bed, lights blazing, eyes locked on the hallway where the basement door waited at the end. Every creak of the old house, every whisper of the wind felt like footsteps. By morning, she was pale and shaky. She called Detective Jennings, but her call went to voicemail. She almost packed a bag to leave, but something inside her stubborn pride, maybe desperation, kept her rooted. It was her house. Why should she be the one to run? Still, she needed answers. That afternoon, Emily went to the Maple Hollow Historical Society, a cramped building filled with dusty files and aging volunteers. She explained her address, her tenant, and the bones. An older woman behind the desk froze. "Maple Hollow Road?" the woman whispered. "Dear, you live in the gallows house?" Emily felt her chest tighten. "The what?" The woman pulled out a brittle folder. Inside were newspaper clippings from the late 1800s. Grainy photographs showed the very same house, porch sagging even then. Headlines screamed, "Local undertaker arrested in grave robbing scandal." Bodies stolen from cemeteries sold for study. Victims' families demand justice. The name leapt off the page. Nathaniel Harris. Emily's breath caught. Harris. The woman nodded grimly. They said he was an undertaker by trade, but he made more money selling corpses to medical schools. Bones, too. When they raided his home, they found dozens in the basement. The townsfolk swore he never left, that his spirit stayed to guard his collection. Emily's stomach churned. But that was over a century ago. The woman's eyes were sharp. Old houses remember, dear, and sometimes so do the dead. That night, Emily triple-locked every door, every window. She left the TV on, the sound a constant murmur against the silence. At 3:07 a.m., the TV flickered. Static hissed. Then came the smell-damp earth, iron, the stench of graves. It seeped through the vents, curling around her like invisible smoke. Her phone buzzed on the table. She snatched it up, desperate for any distraction, only to see an unknown number flashing across the screen. Against her better judgment, she answered, "Hello?" Static. Then faintly, a voice. Low, rasping, familiar. "Don't come down here, Mrs. Carson." Emily's blood ran cold. Harris. She dropped the phone. The line stayed open, the sound of shuffling and scraping filling the room. Slowly, she realized it wasn't just coming from the phone. It was coming from the floor beneath her feet. The next morning, she called Detective Jennings again. This time, the detective answered, her voice tight. "You're not crazy," Jennings said. "I pulled more records last night. Your tenant, this Harris, he matches old sketches of Nathaniel Harris. Same beard, same coat, same face." Which is impossible, considering he died in prison in 1892. Emily's knees went weak. So what was living in my basement? Jennings didn't answer right away. "I think it was never alive, Mrs. Carson, not anymore." That night, Jennings came to the house herself. She insisted on inspecting the basement, gun drawn, flashlight cutting through the shadows. Emily followed reluctantly, the beam trembling in her own hands. The basement was colder than ever. Their breaths fogged in the air. The concrete seemed damp, slick with something dark. The rows of bones were gone. Emily gasped. They were here, hundreds of them. Jennings scanned the floor, jaw tightening. Then where are they now? From the far corner came a sound. A faint, brittle crackling like dry wood splintering. The light swept across the room. The bones were back, only not stacked neatly anymore. They were rising, piece by piece, fitting together in jerking, unnatural movements. A skull locked into a spine. Ribs clattered into place. Arms twitched and bent as if pulled by invisible strings. Emily choked on a scream. "Oh my God." The skeleton lurched forward, eyes hollow, jaw hanging open in a silent wail. Jennings fired. The bullet shattered against bone, fragments clattering across the floor. But the thing didn't stop. The smell of earth and rot grew suffocating. The skeleton raised an arm, pointing not at Jennings, but at Emily. And then, in Harris's calm, steady voice, it spoke. "You invited me in." The words hung in the basement like a curse. "You invited me in." Emily's body turned to ice. The skeleton's jaw moved without sound now, clacking loosely as if mocking speech. Its eye sockets bored into her, hollow yet full of something ancient, something hungry. Detective Jennings fired again, bullets cracking bone. The skeleton shattered apart, clattering into pieces across the cement floor. Silence rushed in, thick and absolute. Jennings grabbed Emily's arm. "We're leaving now." They fled up the stairs, slamming the door shut. Emily leaned against it, chest heaving, while Jennings radioed for backup with shaking hands. But the smell followed them. Damp earth, rust, old graves. Emily whispered, "It won't matter. You can't shoot what's already dead." Jennings looked at her but didn't argue. Backup arrived within half an hour, 3 more deputies with weapons drawn. They swept the basement from corner to corner. Nothing, no bones, no skeleton, only empty concrete. Jennings cursed it under her breath. "It's playing with us." One deputy muttered, "Or she's losing it." Emily snapped, "I know what I saw, and you all will too, sooner or later." The house seemed to sigh in agreement, the old beams groaning overhead. That night, Emily didn't dare sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, coffee cold in her hands. Jennings had insisted on staying with her, posted in the living room, but even her presence didn't ease the dread curling in Emily's stomach. At 3:11 a.m., the basement door opened on its own. Jennings leapt to her feet, gun raised. "Stay here." "No," Emily whispered. "He wants me." Together, they descended into the basement. The smell was overwhelming, now rot iron soil. Their flashlights flickered. At the far wall, a figure stood in the shadows. Not the skeleton, not a man. Something between. Mr. Harris. His beard was gray, his overcoat ragged, but his skin was thin as parchment, stretched over bones that jutted like knives. His eyes glowed faintly, not alive, not dead. "You paid me to stay," Emily whispered. Harris smiled faintly. "No, you paid me to return." Jennings aimed her weapon. "Stay where you are." Harris tilted his head. "The living never learn. You bury us, you lock us away, but we rise. We always rise." The walls seemed to pulse, shadows crawling. From the corners of the basement, more bones began dragging themselves together, scraping across the floor in awful unison. Ribs locking, skulls rolling, limbs snapping into place. Jennings fired, but Harris didn't flinch. The bullets passed through him as though through mist. "Stop," Emily cried. "What do you want from me?" Harris's gaze fixed on her. A place, a keeper. Every house needs one. The bones at her feet rattled, inching closer, climbing her legs like insects. Emily screamed, kicking them away. Jennings pulled her back, dragging her toward the stairs. But Harris moved faster than any corpse should, blocking their path. His hand shot out, gripping Emily's wrist with icy strength. "You opened the door," he whispered. "You gave me a name. You let me in." Emily fought, but his grip burned like fire and frost combined. Images flooded her mind, graves cracked open, bodies pulled apart, bones arranged in careful rows. His work, his collection, his endless hunger. Jennings struck him with the butt of her gun. Harris staggered, loosening his grip just enough. Emily wrenched free, stumbling up the stairs. Jennings fired again, covering her retreat. They burst into the kitchen, slamming the door shut. Jennings shoved a chair under the knob. The wood rattled instantly, as if fists were pounding from the other side. Emily sobbed. "We can't stop him. We can't." Jennings grabbed her shoulders. "Then we burn him out." Minutes later, Jennings doused the basement steps with lighter fluid she found under the sink. Emily struck a match with trembling hands. The fire roared to life, spilling heat and smoke into the house. The basement screamed, not Harris's voice, not human, but a chorus of wails from every bone, every stolen soul. The smell of burning fleshless rot filled the air as shadows writhed against the walls. Emily covered her ears, tears streaming down her face. "God forgive me." The house groaned, shook, and then fell silent. By dawn, the fire crew had put it out. The basement was nothing but blackened stone. No bones remained. No trace of Harris. Jennings drove Emily to a motel. "Don't go back there," she warned. "That place is gone. Let it stay gone." Emily nodded numbly. She wanted to believe it was over. But that night, lying in the stiff motel bed, she woke at 3:03 a.m. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered with shaking hands. Static hissed. Then the familiar low voice spoke. "Don't come down here, Mrs. Carson." The line went dead. The end.